Before the night that made Betty Andreasson famous, before the 5 beings entered her Massachusetts home, before her family appeared to be frozen in place, and before investigators recorded hours of hypnotic testimony, Betty claimed that something had already found her. The first incident came in 1944. She was only 7 years old. The events in this series are presented chronologically, beginning with Betty's earliest reported encounter and following her life to its end. Many of the childhood details were recovered decades later under hypnosis. Hypnotic recollection is not proof that an event occurred exactly as remembered. It can produce sincere testimony while also being vulnerable to suggestion, reconstruction, and error. What follows is the account Betty gave and the extraordinary pattern investigators believed they found within it. 7-year-old Betty Aho was waiting for her friend, Dee Dee. She sat inside a small play hut that older children had assembled from old boards. The shade beneath the trees offered relief from the August heat. Betty ate crackers and watched the path, expecting Dee Dee to arrive. Then she heard something buzzing. Betty initially thought it was a bee, but it had no visible wings, no legs, no recognizable body. It resembled a brilliant marble, approximately the size of a bumblebee, circling her head 5 or 6 times while producing a steady sound. The light moved closer. Then it touched the space between her eyes. The object felt cold. Almost immediately, Betty became drowsy and fell backward. In her later hypnotic account, this was the point where ordinary memory began to fail. There were impressions of voices and of people associated with a brilliant light, but the sequence would not remain entirely clear. According to this hypnotic account, there were voices coming from this brilliant marble-sized light. The voices that sounded like they were speaking in unison were telling her that they had been watching her and that she's been coming along fine. They also had a premonition for her, indicating that the next event would be 5 years from now. At that time, there would be things that they could show her and that she will see marvelous things, but now is not the time, and that they would return and to not be afraid. When her friend eventually arrived, the luminous object was gone. Betty told her friend Dee Dee that a bee had stung her. Dee Dee examined the place between Betty's eyes. There was no swelling, no wound, no mark at all. The experience had apparently been reduced in Betty's conscious memory to something a child could understand. A strange bee that did not hurt. But according to Betty, the same cold sensation would return 5 years later. After this event, for some odd reason, even strange to herself, she began to love the outdoors much more. She said after this event occurred, she grew an intense appreciation for Mother Nature. She wandered through fields, ponds, and brooks. She collected berries and flowers, caught small fish and snakes, climbed hemlocks, and remained in the woods until nearly dark. One summer day, at the age of 12, she separated from several other children and went uphill to search for an animal trap she had lost. She passed the chicken coops, moved through mountain laurel, and approached the hole where the trap had disappeared. Betty bent down to look. Something looked back. Oh! She described a small humanoid emerging from the opening. Its eyes were large and dark. It wore a rough dark brown one-piece covering that reminded her of coarse stone or tree bark. Across its chest were two vertical arrangements of luminous controls. Red, orange, and yellow appeared along one side. Green, blue, and purple appeared along the other. Between them was a dark, flattened badge with tiny streaks of light moving inside it. Betty took out stones from her pocket and actually threw rocks at this being, and this was the result. A similar phenomenon occurred to Carl Higdon in Medicine Bow National Forest over in Wyoming in 1974. 2 different times, 2 different locations, 2 very different encountered beings, yet with the very same phenomenon. The being pressed the purple control on his suit, and with that, a marble-sized ball of white light struck Betty between her eyes. It felt cold, the same cold she associated with the object in the play hut 5 years before. She became sleepy and slowly fell backward into the leaves. The small figure came closer and closer and stood over her. Betty heard voices, but not as ordinary sound. They seemed to form inside her mind. She heard other voices as well as the familiar one that she had heard before. Once again, the encounter slipped behind a barrier in her memory. She hypnotically recalled they were telling her she's got another year. But the following year, the phenomenon would no longer arrive as something the size of a marble. It would appear as something large enough to be mistaken for the moon. 1 year later in Westminster, Massachusetts, Betty was in her family's home leaving to go into the field that was connected to the backyard. Betty's conscious memory of the day contained a peculiar fragment, a set of wooden stairs built by her father, leading from the backyard toward a field above the house. She approached the steps and looked around. Then she began climbing, one hand gripping the railing. Halfway up, she noticed what appeared to be a huge moon hanging above the hill to her right, but the object did not remain over the hill. It became larger and larger. It was moving toward her. Betty described it as an enormous luminous bubble. She tried to move, but her body would not respond. The object came closer until the landscape disappeared inside its light. Without experiencing an ordinary transition, Betty found herself standing in an intensely white room. 3 small beings had glided toward her. Terrified, she warned them that if they hurt her, her father would come after them. The beings told her not to be afraid. Her panic abruptly softened into calm. One of them claimed that her father already knew. What followed was not a single examination. Betty described a journey through a series of rooms and environments, each stranger than the last. She floated toward the next room where a glowing stone slab can be seen. She said she was somehow controlled and floated directly onto it and above it, laying down with her head facing upward. Another slab from the ceiling had come down, and while this was happening, one of the beings removed both her shoes, and she said she couldn't see what they were doing exactly, but felt that they stuck something on each heel of both her feet. One of the beings also had a luminous ball that they were carrying. Both the slab underneath and the ball began glowing green and white, back and forth within seconds of Betty facing up on a lay-back position. Then the being seemingly left the room. Here, unfortunately, our protagonist becomes very frightened yet again. She's in this cold, strange room, and a very strange apparatus has just surrounded our Betty with the glowing orb rectangularly circulating her, as if to say she was being examined in a way that we ourselves aren't privy to. Soon after this strange procedure was done, she was repositioned upright to the standing position, yet still floating. One being asked her to join him, and without a will of her own, floated toward him. The being asked to raise one leg after the other. He removed whatever light needle device were on each of her feet and subsequently stuck both objects to his chest. She was then called to enter yet another room. In this darkened room stood two beings somewhat taller than the other ones she had previously encountered. She described the room as misty, just as when she had first originally entered this strange place, yet with a little more mist. These two beings politely greeted her and told her that she was going for a ride. She was placed upon a circular platform made from a transparent material that felt both firm and rubber-like. A device fitted inside her mouth, holding her tongue down and extending around the back of her ears. One of the beings placed a hand against her forehead, and her fear diminished. The platform began to rotate. Cool droplets fell from above. A being descended, surrounded by bands of rainbow color. As the disc spun, Betty felt herself sink more deeply into its strange surface. She feared that she would become sick, yet the beings continued to reassure her, despite her very strange mode of transportation to a new place.